Well, good morning, everybody. And oh my gosh, look at one of the first things I saw. Look at this. Just me? She said, "Hello, friends. My great niece was just born." Well, then today is your niece's birthday. Can you all join in telling Just Me's niece happy birthday? Someday, Susan will tell her the story. What a big day for you. And hey, if you're not a member, you grab that membership because tomorrow we are having our May birthdays, prizes, and our Mother's Day celebration. That is right. I might even put on a Peg Bundy wig and go on camera. I don't know. But it will be a lot of fun. So, like I said, if you don't have a membership, grab one. It's actually not even 8 quarters. I never thought about that. I never did the math. But anyway, hope everybody's doing good. We are almost to the weekend, almost to a holiday weekend with Mother's Day, which is fun for some and heartbreaking for others. So just get some rest, relaxation, enjoy the phone calls, the texts, or whatever you plan to do. Just pat yourself on the back because you are terrific. So, you can tell I got a little extra pep in my step. And if you guys are noticing, I'm being a little more polite than I normally am. Well, that is because of a very special guest backstage, and that is our amazing friend, Dr. McCoy. You guys remember her from the Caitlin Conley case, and a lot of you helped immensely with that case because Caitlin's out of jail. Now, we considered doing a follow-up, but I really want Caitlin to come on. I don't want her out of jail and me say the wrong thing. You don't have to worry about Dr. McCoy. You have to worry about me, okay? Open mouth, insert foot, change feet. Let's take a second and tell everybody good morning to you. So glad you're here because this case is old, almost 32 years old. Not to date myself. Actually, you guys are going to figure something out. Good morning, Diana Howry. Hey, Ilyanka. I graduated high school in 1993. Okay. My son was born in 1993. So to think about 1993 and to think about 12-year-old Sara Anne Wood riding her bike on the way back from church where her daddy was a pastor and being followed in a very, very off the beaten path area, really. You say New York and people instantly think you're talking about New York City. There is way more to New York than New York City. You just can't tell that to NBC, okay? It's our secret. This guy turned out to be a serial killer, okay? He had something in his mind to where he thought he was sending souls to God. Now, he has confessed to many crimes. And they know he's telling the truth because he told them things that really either A, they didn't know, or B, they already had that evidence, just nobody else knew. Good morning, Angel Lions. And thank you, Sophia, for the Crime Lines and Lies membership. So it's a horrific case. And his only ace in the hole This is the bastard I'm talking about right now. There he is. He's much older now. Lewis Lent. Look at him. Supposedly he's got some sort of unspecified brain disorder where he blacks out all the time. That's called New Year's Eve in Oklahoma. All right? Don't be talking about some unspecified brain disorder. His only ace in the hole is telling where Sara Anne Wood is. We're going to talk about that. There's Sara. Beautiful, beautiful girl. Cheerleader, popular, very active in church, you name it. Now, this is outside of Sauquoit, New York. If you're familiar with upstate New York, well, if you know, you know. Anyway, August 18th, 1993, Sara rides her bike home from church where she was doing her schoolwork. Okay, her dad's a pastor there. Well, her mom thought maybe she hung out at church a little later and just wasn't home yet. Found out she had left sometime before. They go door to door, door to door, door to door, door to door. Of course, call the police, you name it. Later that night, they found her bicycle and they found some of her personal belongings underneath a bush. The only saving grace that her amazing parents, her amazing brother, the community, and law enforcement had going for them is there was no social media in 1993. None. There was no Facebook groups talking about what happened to Sara. There was no Twitter. It's hard for some people to believe that they used to solve cases without the internet. Crazy, right? Could you imagine if now this happened and it's all over the place? Because it was all over the place. The family was on Oprah. They were on Phil Donahue. This has been on Dateline, 48 Hours. Huge, huge case. If this happened now, old Bullhorn Betty would be in Litchfield, New York, yelling for their arrests. But it was a serial killer, and he is the devil himself. All right, I'm going to bring up the one and only Dr. McCoy. You guys clap like you've never clapped before. Well, good morning, my amazing friend. How are you, beautiful?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Enjoying the mountain springtime, which finally came after 6 months of snow.
What's your temperature? What's your high today to be?
Right now it's 57 degrees.
Okay. All right, so it must feel pretty good to you. So, like, what's the high going to be today?
62, 63 probably.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's spring. The snow's gone, so all is good with the world.
There you go. Exactly. Now, do you think you'll get another snow because it's not uncommon?
No. If it does, if it snows between now and November, it'll melt in hours.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to it. Now, in 1993, as you know, Sara Anne Wood was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by Lewis Lent. Do you remember when this broke in your area? And you don't have to tell people where you live, just...
Well, I didn't live that far away from Sauquoit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was big news in all the newspapers. And there was nothing I could do. I was working full time and had a little kid. So
Well, what are you going to do? I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, we got to go search. We got to go search. People don't really know how to search.
Right. That's where the state police came in, and they did an admirable job. And they really didn't know where to look. That didn't happen until a few months later when Louis Lent got arrested for the kidnapping. But that's taking the story a little further too fast.
Oh, don't worry. We'll come back to it. We will come back to it. Because this is extremely random. He does not know the parents, does not know her. And I think about some of the places where he kidnapped, and except for Rebecca, which we'll talk about here in a second, because she's a little hero. I'm not going to use her last name because she doesn't want to be reminded of this case anymore. She refused money, interviews, and everything from 48 hours. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it because I'm sure it's extremely traumatic for her when he tried to kidnap her.
Mm-hmm.
So, Quad, what was I saying?
So we just followed.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I mean, we have Saratoga Springs. We have where Berdano was from. Sarah is the absolute strangest because, again, it's way off the beaten path. The only time he got brave was with Rebecca. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Rebecca. I'm going to put her picture up. Okay. Sweet right. Girl. So in January of 1994, she was walking to school. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Louis puts a gun to her. She's in her backpack. She thinks quickly and pretends to have an asthma attack. There's many eyewitnesses that thought maybe a father and daughter were having an argument, or this is her father and he was going to help her. Then she got out of her backpack and took off running. Well, a quick thinker there in Pittsboro, Massachusetts, followed the truck. Then in central New York, they get this fax, secure fax. They start putting it together and they realized we have a serial kidnapper, murderer, whatever you want to call it, on our hands. You go, Deb.
Well, yeah, she was in downtown Pittsfield. I know that area. And he apparently just saw her walking down the street with her backpack on, and he grabbed the backpack, and she managed to get out of it by faking the asthma attack. And they found him, the police found him within hours, took him in for questioning. He sounded kind of strange. I mean, if you look at him, he is strange. They, within a few hours, because she was going to school in the morning, by afternoon, they had this members of the state police investigator squad in Pittsfield questioning him. It took them 2 days to break him sufficiently that they got the information about Sara Anne, and that he knew things that they had never put in the newspaper.
That's what always gets me.
Yep.
Okay. For one, we're in the world of social media, so people scream and yell all the time. Well, if the police would just tell us more, if the police would just tell us more. I'm like, no, they have to keep things to themselves for things like this. He knew things that they hadn't even told the family.
Right. So he got picked up on the 7th of January. And by the 10th of January, they had managed to get him to admit to certain things. And they were on their way to Racket Lake in the snow in order to find her body.
Now, was that the first search around Racket Lake where they had to get machines to excavate because they couldn't get through, the ground was frozen?
Oh yeah, it was January. Racket Lake is in my school district.
Okay. All right.
And I know exactly how much snow they get, and there's tons of it.
Hold on. I'm going to answer this question. Emmylou, if you copy that link and put it into your Safari browser, it should work that way on an iPhone. I apologize. Okay, so back to Racket Lake. We know that she wasn't found there. We know that he will not say where she is. It is speculated that it's because he has other bodies there, because he was on quite a spree, I should say, in central New York and then went down to Massachusetts. But he started in Massachusetts.
I think he goes for joyrides all over the place, or at that time, and just came upon people that he managed to assess that he could handle this.
Mm-hmm.
And because if you'll notice, you had two 12-year-old girls, you had a 10-year-old boy, I had a 16-year-old young man who was mentally disabled,
Mm-hmm.
and God only knows how many others there were.
Well, and I know people are going to ask, is he in jail? Did he get the death penalty? No death penalty. He's actually serving a life sentence in Massachusetts. And then once that is completed, he will go to New York and he will serve for Sara Anne Wood. Yeah. And just like every state, New York does some things that are real messed up. But when it comes to their protocol for finding missing children, it is amazing. I'm talking all hands on deck, first priority. And the protocol they use, do you guys remember a couple of years ago, Charlotte Senna that disappeared outside of Saratoga Springs from a park? She was riding her bike. They have actually upped their protocol. They actually practice this, the troopers do. And they found her in an RV hidden in a cabinet. Now, listen, that's not good news, but the good news is they found her. So hats off to them.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there are just way too many of them. And also another person involved in Mr. Lent's life ended up being found in New York a couple of years later. So New York is really on top of things.
Yep, it really is. It's very impressive. And to think in 1993, when they didn't have the technology, the communication that we have now, that they stayed on top of it, priority number one. And when they got that call about little Rebecca, the attempted kidnapping in Massachusetts, they had files ready, they put it together, and they said, we got to go see him. This sounds like what he attempted to do, or what he did do to Sara. Let's go to the most, well, I'll just say recent, because a few months ago, again, and I think they've done 4 or 5 shows. Oh, Emmylou, you figured it out. Welcome. Welcome. They are recovering the story on 48 Hours, and I believe the rerun is going to be Saturday night on CBS. So let's go through this together.
Now to a major update to a long-running 48 Hours investigation. This week, the show is looking into the more than 30-year search for a victim of a serial killer. 12-year-old Sara Anne Wood was abducted in New York in 1993 on her way home from church. The man who murdered her is behind bars, but authorities say he refuses to give her family the peace of knowing where he left her body.
Okay, now supposedly he's got this unspecified brain disease where he blacks out. Now, he also has tried to recant some confessions But well, he can't because what he said is something only the investigators know. Now, one thing you and I were talking about yesterday afternoon and this morning before the show is one confession he gave was to a Catholic priest.
Yes.
Who turned it over and verified, yep, that adds up. His defense attorney had it thrown out because the Catholic priest should never have repeated what he said, and they removed the Catholic priest. What do you think about that? It's his vow, I guess.
Well, so far, reading over his actions, I don't think he's Catholic. I think he just went to the Catholic priest because he was all excited about having done this deed. And a Catholic priest does not recognize people when they go into the confessional because at that time, most of the confessionals were enclosed and the priest could not see the person.
Mm-hmm.
So he could have just gone on in and bragged about what he did. But apparently the Catholic priest couldn't, of course, you can see the conundrum the priest would be in. He knows something that could end up being a horrible situation, and it did end up becoming a horrible situation, and they couldn't use the information. And the Catholic priest, because of the vow he takes to not reveal anything in confession,
Mm-hmm.
He was probably dismissed from his services. I can't imagine the horror the priest had just listening to this and knowing he had to make a decision, and he gave up his life career to try to help other future victims.
Right.
It didn't work.
It didn't work. And I mean, I know that this guy's never going to see the light of day. And I mean, he'll probably never serve a day for Sara Anne Wood because he's in his 70s now. But
Yeah.
you still want to see the families all get their justice, whether he serves it or not. All right, let's get back to this.
48 Hours correspondent Aaron Moriarty has been on this case since the very beginning and has the latest on the unending search for Sara.
Dusty Wood was just 16 years old when his sister Sara disappeared on August 18, 1993.
She was an exuberant person. She was excited to be alive.
Sara was last seen riding her bike from church in Sauquoit, New York. When she didn't arrive home, a massive search began. 48 Hours cameras were given unprecedented access.
We need to know where Sara is. Please help us find her.
But there were no leads until 5 months later when 12-year-old Becky Savarese was almost abducted by a man in a truck as she walked to school in Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
He said, "Do you see the gun I have?" He's like, "Just do everything I say. Everything would be perfectly okay."
That's when Becky faked an asthma attack.
And I just ran.
Police learned a man named Louis Lent had been driving the truck. At first, Lent denied knowing about Becky, but he soon confessed to trying to take her.
Whoa. She fakes an asthma attack. She breaks out of the straps of the backpack. People are thinking it's a father and daughter struggling until she starts, yelling, "Help, help." And one dude jumps in his car and follows him to the gas station, gets the tag number, and calls 911. That's called see something, say something, and they did.
Hey, he was a hero.
Mm-hmm. And her too.
Yes.
I wonder if they taught her that in school or she's just that quick of a thinker.
Huh. Well, there had already been another incident actually involving Mr. Lent in the same town a couple of years before. So that may have been something that people started to talk about.
Well, and I think about, taking the innocence of the area. Because, I mean, everyone saw on here, I mean, how pretty the area is. It's small. Can you describe the community to us? Because it's a postage stamp. It's tiny.
Pittsfield is one of the larger towns in
Oh, no.
Western.
I meant Central New York. I'm back to
Oh,
Sarah.
Central New York. Okay, you're back to Sarah. Okay. The area is in the Mohawk Valley, which is between two mountain ranges, the Adirondacks and the Catskills. And Litchfield and Sauquoit and Utica are all in that lovely, lovely area with this beautiful river. And you can go an hour's drive in different directions and find mountains and ski resorts and golf courses, and it's a very nice place to live. We enjoy it. Most of the people have comfortable lives when you move away from the inner city, and they lived in an idyllic place, almost in the woods, with little white churches every couple of miles. And her father was the pastor of one of these little churches. They lived a very nice, comfortable life.
So it's called what? Norwich Corners.
Yes.
Because we were talking about this earlier. I said, it's like the news doesn't know geography very well. They can't figure out exactly where this kidnapping happened. One will say Norwich Corners. Then they say Litchfield. Then they say outside of Utica. Then they say the Frankfurt area. Then they say not far from Little Falls. And I'm like, just explain it to people.
Yes. Well, Litchfield is an area, not a township or a village. Norwich Corners is an area, not a township, not a village, not a hamlet. The closest village is Sauquoit. And they have a great school system there. Everybody wants to live in Sauquoit. Frankfurt is further away in the next county over, and Utica is about 20 minutes north of Sauquoit.
Okay. Now, my understanding is, okay, she went to school in Sauquoit. The bus would drop her off by her dad's church, and she would walk up there and do her homework, and then, either go back home with him or ride her bike home. So I do wonder, how would Lewis know about such a small little place? He's not involved with the church. There was no internet at the time to go and research people and just find a random child in Central New York. It just kind of makes you wonder. What do you think?
I think he was on a search mission.
Me too. He was on a hunt.
He specifically was looking for children, especially young ladies between 12 and 16, because they hadn't developed sufficiently yet. And it's much easier to look for innocent children in a country setting.
Yep.
Especially back then, before internet.
Well, and also because they're, kids in a country setting are unassuming, not paying attention. Nothing's going to happen, and I couldn't imagine being these parents and knowing that you love your children. You've done everything you can possibly do right. And the devil himself shows up and takes your child.
That's got to be the number one nightmare.
Yeah. We just talked yesterday again about Michael Vaughn in Fruitland, Idaho. To this day, this is the problem with the internet. So many people will not believe what law enforcement is reporting to them. Sometimes I get it. I do. But sometimes I'm like, what is there not to believe? You know what I'm saying? Well, in 1993, all this community had was the news stations and the local papers saying this is what happened. This is what police said. So there wasn't all this. Pss, 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 pss. I think the pastor did it. I hear his wife stays at home drunk all day. You know, the rumors that people say.
Yeah. The common sense seems to not be very common anymore.
No.
New York State Police Detective Frank Lawrence.
We spent a lot of time with him.
Lent eventually also confessed to the kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder of Sara Anne Wood. After pleading guilty, Lent was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
Well, she was vulnerable. He was hunting, and he found the victim.
But the guilty plea didn't end the search for Sara.
I handed him a piece of paper, and this is what he drew.
Hundreds searched in brutally cold conditions, but the map led nowhere. For years, New York State Police detectives Reese Treen and John.
Okay, so that's when he drew the map and they went to Racket Lake.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the search we were talking about where the ground was so frozen they had to bring machinery out.
Right.
Woo! Woo-hoo! Man. Dang.
And it gets cold there.
Van Fallon visited Lent in prison, trying to get an answer to the question, where is Sara? Isn't it difficult for the two of you not to just jump across the table and grab him?
No. One of the things you have to do is you have to leave hate outside of the room when you go in.
Finding the body is important. Then my mother could know where she is.
He won't give it up. Virginia said, I thought the fellow inmates dispose of these types of offenders. Guess not. This is one of my theories as to why he will not tell where Sara is. Protection in jail. Okay?
Right.
At this point, he knows he'll never see the light of day. They say there could be more bodies. I think he would be kind of proud of that in a way. But that is his only ace in the hole. So to answer Virginia's question, and it's only my opinion, they're not going to let anything happen to him because he is the key to some unsolved murders. What do you think, Doctor?
Well, that's his one ace in a hole because most of the time the offenders who do get killed have given everything they know. He has not given one very important thing, and apparently these other fellow inmates have a little bit of a heart, and they're not going to kill him, we hope, until he gives out the information, and that may be how he gets to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know his purpose in staying alive at this point, though.
I mean, it's not like he has a cellmate or anything, but they keep him protected.
Yeah, they've got to try to find where she is.
Lisa Durr, I have missed you, girlfriend. Lisa said he's not telling where she is because he feels control over Sara. Now, that was a theory on another channel by, I think, what's his name? Dr. Grande. He said Sara was probably the one that fought back the most. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't know.
I couldn't tell you, but I think he gets a good feeling over knowing that he's in control of her parents' emotions, even at this point.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Aaron Moriarty joins us now. Aaron, why do investigators believe that they can still find where she is buried after all of this time?
Well, and it's impressive, isn't it, that they are still looking? They're so still devoted to this case. Well, Lent professed to be a religious guy, and he's now in his 70s, and they believe that he might want to clear his conscience and not just say where he left Sara Anne Wood, but there's another young man that he had confessed to and then recanted, confessed to. And they want to find Jamie Lusher's body as well. So they're hoping that over time, also he's known for kind of doling out information over time. And so we thought it's really worth going back and looking at this.
You know, Lent confessed to the 2 killings, also kidnapping Becky, but yet he stayed under the radar. Detectives investigating him didn't know that he was a possible sex offender. How did he do that?
Well, I have to tell you, that is the scariest part of this story and why it's so important for parents to see this story, because he hid behind the Bible. He went to Bible school. He helped everybody. In fact, people trusted him so much that they would have him take care of their kids.
Oh, man.
And one of his victims came because someone hired him to work in a cinema, and he would hire kids to help him. And that's how he found one of his victims. So it's...
All right, let's talk about that, because they're talking about James Bernardo.
Right. But
So, go ahead, Ben.
James is one of the few people that Lent has spoken in detail about exactly what he did. And the poor child, who's only about 10, I think, he must have been totally horrified, and he ended up being killed. And again, he was put in New York State, even though he was he was captured in Pittsfield, which is Massachusetts.
That was a big hunting ground for him, Pittsfield, Massachusetts, because he got a job at a movie theater as a janitor.
Yes.
That's when he encountered little Jimmy Bernardo.
Right.
Okay. He bound his hands up, had him at knife point, and then he drove him to his home in Newfield, New York. Now let's talk about this house and this underground room where he actually had what he wanted, a chamber. He had chains and hooks into cement walls. I'll let you continue, Doctor.
Yeah, and anybody who has an imagination can imagine what he's doing. He also had some kind of a wooden box that he was designing. I don't think it was completely finished at the time that they found it, but he was designing this thing that looked like an oversized coffin, and his plan was to put the people in there, and then every time he wanted to use them, he would take them out, use them, put them back in the box.
That was his plan. He was going to put He was going to put him in the box, take him out, get his freak on, and put him back in there. That is disgusting. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said this was all for God.
Well, I don't know what kind of a God he has, but it's not the kind of God that I have.
Yeah, I never read that one in the Bible.
Oh, no. So he did bring the child to his place, and he stripped him of practically everything, and then the child fell asleep, probably because of exhaustion and fear. And so he started to take off the last piece of the child's clothing, and the child woke up, and so he said, okay, now's my chance. And he apparently was not very successful at his own abilities. This is Mr. Lent, and decided that the kid just didn't turn him on, so he was going to have to kill him. And he took him 250 miles away, down near the Finger Lake someplace, I believe it was, and eventually strangled him and hung him up on a tree.
Goodness. Well, I mean, and
it took quite a while for them to find the child.
It did. In his confession, he can't recant. So I'm glad they did some, legal judo to get it put back in there, because the duct tape that was found over little Jimmy's mouth and over his eyes, they matched to Louis Lent's truck.
Yes.
So where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes. I mean, the poor child, the poor parents. He seemed, Mr. Lent seemed to be the type of person who was just looking for the ideal partner, if you want to say that, and he would try out a lot of people to see if they were the right sort for him.
Mhm. Now, supposedly he's been doing a lot of writing in jail, and they don't release any of that to the public. But can you just imagine what the FBI behavioral science unit is going through when they read it? They had a hypnotist from the U.S. Navy who speaks to terrorists and shit in Guantanamo Bay. He spoke to him for like, what, 4 or 5 hours, doctor?
Something like that, yes.
And he said he won't break, but he did all these things. Is that not nuts?
A very, very frightening situation.
I hope this family can have closure.
Yeah, Aaron Morati, thank you so much.
Yeah, that tells me that he has deep personal problems, and that's just an understatement.
Just an understatement. Exactly. And you know what I really can't get over? If you go through all the court documents just in Massachusetts, nobody has ever put anything in for insanity, the mental illness defense. Do you find that surprising, considering what he has confessed to doing?
Actually, no. And insanity usually means you're not playing with reality very well. And Louis Lent seems to be very in control of things, very aware of exactly what's happening. He made a mistake, he got caught. But insanity and evil are not the same thing. And I think
that is the comment of the day. Insanity and evil are not the same things. Say that again, doctor.
Insanity and evil are not the same thing.
Woo! I'm going to use that for a show. I'll give you credit. Don't worry.
This is News Channel 2 at 6 with Bill Worden.
The story of Sara Wood has affected all of us. The trail that has taken police this far began when Sara suddenly dropped out of sight. When she first disappeared, the small community of Litchfield came rushing to help the Wood family. Perhaps she was only lost, but before long, everything led to an abduction. The 5-foot brown-haired girl had been taken in only a moment's time while pedaling home from her father's Norwich Corners Church. The only evidence.
Again, great police work almost 32 years ago, because the troopers already had it summed up. This is a true abduction. Her flyer said non-familial abduction. That needs to be on more alerts and more posters so people leave the families alone. Go ahead, doctor.
Yeah, they came up with the non-familial part really quickly. It was within 24 hours, I believe. There is a question about the bike. The bike was found leaning against a tree, and Mr. Lent said that the chain was broken. And if you look at the picture that of the bike leaning against the tree, the chain is loose. So she may have had to stop and start walking with the bike. And there you go. There's his victim right there. This was an easy one.
Well, I didn't think about that. And some have theorized that he broke the chain.
Could be.
I don't know why he would, but it makes more sense that she was walking her bike.
Yes. Also, she had some big things that she was carrying on the bike. She had a bunch of 8x10 transparencies. She had a church songbook, and she had some poster board, and she was trying to balance all this stuff while riding her bike. So I'm thinking that she wasn't going very fast, and it was easy for him to overtake her, or he might have like gotten so close that she fell off the bike in an evasive move, and all the stuff went flying, and he went to get her and she went to get the stuff, and it took a minute for her to switch gears and realize what was really happening.
Now that makes a lot of sense. And also she couldn't be going very fast because they live up on a hill on the left when you turn off the road, the main road to get to their, I guess, neighborhood community. And so, I mean, I'm not saying it's a mountain, but I mean, she would, be going up the hill with all that stuff. And
yeah, that particular area is really close to the foothills of the Catskill Mountains, so it gets hilly at that point.
Our friend Just Me said, or she dropped something and stopped to pick it up.
Right.
Because, the bicycle chain, the only reason I thought that maybe he did it is because he was struggling with her.
Yeah, it just looked loose on the picture. It didn't look like it was there. I couldn't see a break. But
when we have a question from the chat, Rianne said she wants to know, was Louis Lent ever professionally diagnosed?
Not that I know of.
The only thing that I could find through all my extensive research, you know how I love to deep dive, don't you guys, is that he has an unspecified brain disorder that causes blackouts.
I believe that was a self-diagnosis also.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Because there's no such thing as an undiagnosed diagnosis.
But like you said, insanity does not equate equal. You say it much better than me.
Sarah had even been there, her bicycle and some books. They were found strewn in an area just off Hackadam Road near where Sarah lived. Within days, the search had widened, and state police were brought in and an elaborate search plan put into effect, with volunteers combing literally every inch of an area in a 50-mile sweep out from Sarah's home. Her parents, Bob and Frances, with the help of the Sara Wood Rescue Center, mount a strong campaign to get Sarah's picture on posters. Millions go out across the country, and the Woods begin getting national coverage.
Okay, I want to talk for a second about the Sara Anne Wood Rescue Center. It is now a chapter in Central New York of National Missing and Exploited Children.
Yes.
So they have a center right there that they hear about a child missing. They are Johnny on the spot. They are printing flyers. They are getting posters up. They are making phone calls, and I love it.
I believe they've moved from Litchfield over to Utica because you just have a lot more people in Utica to help. But it's only everybody goes to Utica for shopping from Litchfield or Sauquoit, so it's an everyday travel.
Okay.
Hearing on shows like Donahue and Oprah Winfrey. Meanwhile, for the family, for her friends, for the...
Here I'm interrupting again. Boy, I tell you what, those were the days when they had talk TV, and NBC, CBS, ABC. There was, you had Oprah, whether you like her or not. Phil Donahue, whether you like him or not. Good old Geraldo that used to fight with Klan members. That was a great time because they nationally would speak about missing children. Nobody would know about John Benet Ramsey without these talk shows throughout the day.
Right.
And they started getting all the ratings and everything. And the next thing you know, national news is covering it. And I've noticed in the last 15 years, very rarely on the legacy media, or they call it mainstream, do you hear anything about a missing child. Why do you think that is, Doctor?
Well, I see my share of it. They now post these things within minutes on your cell phones. You can have Amber Alerts on cell phones now, and they just pop right up. You don't need to do the newspaper and wait for a couple of hours when you've got in the Utica area, you have posters in all the Walmarts within a couple of days, if not faster. They're all in the grocery stores and things like that, even if they're not quite local.
And, and of course, we have the internet.
Yes.
And I mean, it runs away like wildfire, but it's not always in a positive way. I'm sure you've noticed. It's not, oh my gosh, we have to find this child. Some people instantly go to, they want to solve a crime from behind their computer. So like they're instantly digging through Facebook profiles. Don't get me wrong, I do it. So it has caused a few issues, because when I was growing up, it was a thing when we were walking through Warehouse Market, and I was told, if you get away from this cart, you see that milk carton right there, you're going to wind up being on it.
Oh, that's scary.
Well, remember the milk cartons, Doctor?
Yeah, yep, I remember those. They don't do it anymore. Did you notice? Or they don't do it up here anyhow.
Well, they say it's because what's his name? That pediatrician, Dr. Spock.
Yeah.
He testified in front of Congress and said that it's harmful for children to see that at the grocery store.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Or seeing it at your breakfast table. Look at this little kid. They're no longer with us. That kind of stuff.
That's what he mentioned was the breakfast table. You get a bowl of cereal, you're making a milkshake, and it's harmful to children.
Yes.
A community that has reached out so strongly to adopt this little girl into their hearts. We watch and wait.
You're watching The Unfinished Journey, the 30-year search for Sara. Here now is Jolene Ferris.
Good evening, everyone. I'm grateful to have you with me. It's hard to imagine Sara Anne Wood would be 42 years old today. She's forever in our hearts and minds, the 12-year-old girl kidnapped from a quiet street in her hometown of Litchfield in Herkimer County 30 years ago, never to be found. The case is closed. Her killer is serving life in prison for another child's murder, with Sara's sentence in the queue. But for Sara's family and those state police investigators and prosecutors who've worked tirelessly for the past 3 decades to find Sara, it's not over, and it won't be until she's home. We begin tonight with a look back at that day 30 years ago tomorrow that forever changed us all. August 18th, 1993, a catastrophic event on a quiet country road involving one little girl changed everything and everyone.
It was probably around 4 o'clock when I first got notified. I'm not sure if it went through 911 in Herkimer County, but I got notified by our troop headquarters that there was a disappearance of a young child, and it had some suspicious markings to it.
Such a small town community, the Herkimer County District Attorney didn't even need to be formally notified.
I drove by. I live right around the corner. And I drove by and I saw all the police present, so I just pulled in, and that's how I found out.
As the minutes passed, hope that 12...
Now, that DA from Herkimer County, he is something else, dude. He is tough as nails.
Yes.
And they needed him because he wanted to step above Massachusetts, even without a body. But Massachusetts took precedence because they had a body. and he was tenacious, and he almost had it done.
Well,
But the problem is, it would be second degree in New York because there's no body, and they had first degree in Massachusetts.
So that's why they got it.
Well, he tried.
12-year-old Sara Anne Wood had perhaps taken a different route or stopped at a friend's house, began to fade.
We found her bicycle thrown in a bunch of brush off the side of Hackettam Road, and all her church papers. She had been attending a summer program, Bible school, at her father's church, which was probably about 1.5 miles away from her residence. She was on her way home on her bike when she was abducted by Mr. Lent.
But they didn't know on that day what unimaginable end Sara had met, so they did all they could do. Looked for clues, looked for evidence, and looked for Sara, a fruitless search of the area. Then, 5 months later, on January 7th, 1994, a man named Louis Lent of North Adams, Massachusetts, tried to abduct 12-year-old Rebecca Savarese on her way home from school in Pittsfield, Mass. She escaped, faking an illness. Now retired John Wood was a New York...
Now, we were speaking before the show about Rebecca. And, she refuses to talk about the case anymore. She has been offered money for a book. She was offered money and, whatever else from 48 hours. I actually respect her for just saying, I've done my part.
Yeah, she's 12 years old. She had all this trauma. Running away from a kidnapper, but she got away by the skin of her teeth, and her parents may have decided that she doesn't need to keep reliving this.
Mm-hmm.
They're more interested in her mental health than the glamour and money.
Right. And and now she's married. I think, what is she, 42, 43 years old?
Yeah.
She may not want to keep reliving it. And so I know I've seen a couple of, comments, about how she's being selfish. She's not. She needs to protect her own brain,
They've got everything they need, really. All they want is now the thrill of hearing how fearful she was or something like that. She has served her part well. Let her be.
And imagine the therapy this now woman has had to go through in her life.
Right.
How would you even address that?
I think the parents were right to address it by not addressing it.
Yep.
Calm her down. Let her know that she's blessed to be just fine, and walk away from the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Later, on January 7th, 1994, a man named Louis Lent of North Adams, Massachusetts, tried to abduct 12-year-old Rebecca Savarese on her way home from school in Pittsfield, Mass. She escaped, faking an illness. Now retired John Wood was a New York State police captain at the time.
I dispatched an investigator out to Massachusetts to interview him in the event that he knew something about Sara Anne Wood. And it was right then at that time that he admitted it, and he admitted that he'd seen her pushing her bicycle because the chain was off. And that's when we knew we had our guy. You always hold something back that only you and the perpetrator would know. And in this instance, it was the chain off the bicycle. You'd had to been there.
Subsequent interviews of Lent trying to get him to reveal where he left Sara Anne Wood were frustrating.
Okay, I'm not saying it's simple by any means, but they knew right then we're dealing with an abduction. Mom's up the hill home. Dad was at the church. Now, a neighbor did see Sara around 2:30 p.m.
And right after the neighbor turned his back, and that's when Lent came along, apparently, because it doesn't take that long to bike from the church to the house. It's only a mile and a half on a road semi-paved, and it's not half an hour ride even.
No.
So,
and again, if it was 2025 and a neighbor said, yeah, I saw her on her bicycle around 2:30, you would have the crazies yelling, why didn't the neighbor try to help her or give her a ride home? Because it's a girl on a bicycle going home. We don't stop and talk. That's crazy. I mean, I'm sure your mind is blown by the things you see on social media.
Yeah. But they watch her do that several times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be like all of a sudden they're going to run out and say, here, you got to put your bike in my car. I'll take you home.
Right.
It was just a bad timing that nobody could have predicted.
Nope. And kids are allowed to play. Kids are allowed to ride their bikes.
Yes.
Kids are allowed to go, knock on their friend's door and say, hey, you want to play ball or, look at my new shoes, whatever. So, I just hate it for these parents when a child is abducted and then all the perfect parents come out of the woodwork acting like they never have to sleep or shower or go to the bathroom and say, oh, my eyes are on my child 24/7. My eyes are on my child 24/7. No, they're not. Impossible.
You don't do your child any more good by being a helicopter parent.
There you go.
And you could interview Mr. Lent for probably 3, 4, 5 hours, and he would lead you along the path, making you think he was all set to tell you something. And then he'd look at you and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know Sara Anne Wood. And he'd go right back to ground zero, time and time again.
Lent pleaded guilty to Sarah's murder on October 26, 1996, more than 3 years after he kidnapped and killed her. He was sentenced in Herkimer County Court, where he heard from Sarah's father, Bob Wood.
On August 18th, you took my little girl, you kidnapped my daughter, Sarah, and you terrorized her. And to this day, you refuse to tell us where her body is.
And these infamous parting words from Herkimer County District Attorney Michael Daly.
And from all the people in this community that you've heard, and all the people in this community that you've changed their lives, our message to you, Lois, is burn in hell.
Just.
I love that. For all the people that you have hurt in this community, for what you did, burn in hell. Some people called for his resignation because they said that was unprofessional. What do you think?
I think it was from the heart, and the people who insist that he has to be absolutely positively professional under these circumstances, they don't understand humanity.
Mm-mm. Always got to have that, that was rude person.
Oh, yeah.
Saying what I felt, and that just came out and I meant it. And I'm sure he will.
Louis Lent is currently serving a life sentence in Old Colony Correctional Facility in Massachusetts for the murder of another child, 12-year-old Jimmy Bernardo of Pittsfield, Mass., with Sarah's sentence waiting in the queue. Based on information Lent has given to investigators, they braved sub-zero temperatures up north in Racket Lake.
And what they're trying to do is get about 2 feet into the ground over a 1-acre area where they've cleared the snow away. That is what they think could turn up Sara Anne's body.
But again, no sign of Sarah. Investigators say Lent has sent them on many wild goose chases through the years.
They were Old Forge, the Berkshires, Mountain Greylock in Massachusetts, areas down off Route 20, I believe Cherry Valley Way. We did some digging, and we had probably a dozen canines up in Indian Lake area. Did some excavating up there.
Investigators have tried everything to get Lent to reveal where he left Sara.
We had with us the chief hypnotist from the Naval Intelligence Services, who does all of the hypnotism for all the spy cases and all that stuff for the Navy. And he was under hypnosis for, I'm going to say, probably 4.5 hours. And even then he came right up to saying it, but he just wouldn't. And the hypnotist came out of that session and said, there's 2 things I can tell you for sure. 1, he knows right where she is. And 2, there's no question he did all these things.
And
talk about pulling out all the stops. You get a hypnotist from the U.S. Navy that interrogates terrorists, spies, and you name it, and says he knows where she's at. I don't know anything about hypnotism. Do you, doctor?
Very little, but usually when you hypnotize a person, they don't hide things. But this guy is so into what he's done that he's got control over his subconscious while he's being hypnotized. That tells me there's evil in him.
That's what I'm talking about. If someone hypnotized me, I would probably bitch about my sister and pee my pants. That'd be about all they would get out of me. But they had him like right there. Like you said, that is pure evil. Black Cat Mom 64 said, I remember this creep so vividly. I live in Massachusetts and spent time in Pittsfield and the Berkshires and still do. My kids were all under 10 because of him. I was a helicopter mom. Woo! And that's one thing with these crimes, especially against children. I don't cover a lot of adult crime, not because I enjoy talking about children being murdered, missing, anything like that. It's just because they're the only innocent victims. Okay. Sometimes adults get murdered and they were kind of involved in some stuff. I don't really like to pick through that stuff. But when you see a community that their child has been taken from their community, it changes everyone. Everyone.
Yes, the whole community, even to Sauquoit, to Utica, to Rome, to the Herkimer County, they were all traumatized to some degree or another, and that's what everybody talked about for a long time.
It's like this web of evil that doesn't stop. I mean, of course, you have the crime right there in the middle of your spider web, and then you go from how it affects the family, the parents, the siblings. Sara has a sister and a brother. You have your church community, your community. Then you get into law enforcement and how many people are deeply affected by what they have witnessed, what they have investigated. It's the ultimate FU from the devil.
Really? That's a good way to put that, because that's what it was. I mean, there's just something wrong about the way he presents himself, and it gives me the creeps just to look at him. You can see something there.
Oh, he looks like a straight up ped to me. And those damn Coke bottle glasses. What the hell? Can he see in the future with those? Look how cool those glasses are. What the hell's wrong with his eyes?
He's very, very farsighted. And you can, that's almost a play on words after what you said, seeing into the future. But he can't focus up close at all. Even with his glasses on, it's hard. And at this point, he's probably wearing bifocals. But I always associate that kind of prescription with an odd person.
Well, yeah. I mean, you would know.
Yeah.
Ann said, I wonder if he could have passed the lie detector. Funny story. He passed the lie detector and he lied the whole time. That's another reason on this show I say I don't care about those because they're only a tool for law enforcement. This guy's pulse never got above 78 when he answered 3 questions. Is your name Lewis? Is your birth date blah, blah, blah? Do you know Sara Anne Wood? Flying colors, my friends. Again, that's why I don't care about lie detectors. The doctor can explain more of them than I can.
Lie detectors measure your pulse rate, your heart rate, things like that. And when you lie, your pulse goes up. Your heart might beat a little faster for a couple seconds. And that's what it's looking for. He has the ability to control all that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, somebody who can do that well can possibly be an evil being.
He's a different type of psychopath. He really is.
Yeah. A lot of psychopaths can do that. Control.
Ted Bundy defended himself in court and got acquitted. Okay.
Grief.
Okay. I mean, he passed lie detector tests. I mean, my goodness.
Yep.
The document, Daley says, was signed by everyone from the governors of New York and Massachusetts to the New York State and U.S. attorneys general.
If he would reveal where she was, to be allowed to serve all of his time in federal prison as opposed to state prison, and he still didn't come through.
Why won't Lent just say it? Those who've spent decades trying to persuade him can only speculate.
It's one trump card he still has, I guess. The other reason could possibly be that there's other bodies there where he has her. That's always been a thought.
There's a reason, and one of the reasons is, in my opinion, is probably because there's multiple bodies there.
When Unfinished Journey returns after the break.
When we were...
Okay, now this was new to me, okay? They did another test on him. They showed him pictures of different children, different ages. And they said when he saw a child of a certain age, I'm not going to say the age, you can figure it out yourself, he became really aroused.
Yes.
And his heart rate went up. Have you ever heard of a test like that?
I don't think I've ever heard of it, but I can see how it would be a very valuable test and fairly simple too.
Oh, well, I couldn't imagine being the one given that, because let me tell you what, I'm not a violent person, but I have a feeling I could get violent.
But he also told them ahead of time what the ages were that were of most interest to him.
That makes sense. So this is basically backup testing,
yes,
to prove his confession.
Yep.
Because I know so many people say, well, they confessed, so they should know. There's a lot of crazy people out there, and they want some notoriety. I mean, how many people have confessed to Madeleine McCann, which, by the way, a bunch of news in her case yesterday, and John Benet Ramsey, and they're like, nah, get the hell out of here. You didn't do anything. Because they have the evidence.
Yes.
So this test where they were checking his arousal, which is barf, was to back more evidence to back up what they already knew.
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Welcome back. It would have been easy to drown in the sadness of Sarah's loss, but instead, her family and the entire community pulled together to make sure something positive came from it. And that is the incalculable number of children saved from a similar fate, thanks to posters, perseverance, strength, and faith. The kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Sara Anne Wood didn't just galvanize police and prosecutors toward a common goal of finding Sara. It brought together strangers, civilians, forming an army aimed at raising awareness about all missing and exploited children and keeping all children safe.
So we determined it would be 100 miles, and we would ride from Albany back to Utica, and we would visit schools on the way to deliver our message of safety. And that's the beginning of Sarah's Ride for Missing Children as it morphed into the Ride for Missing Children.
This is actually really important that they don't scare children. They, explain to them, this is what you do if a stranger approaches you. And there's no more being nice when you're a child. If someone you don't know wants to talk to you or tickle you or ask you if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend when you're 10, there's nothing wrong with yelling, help.
Right. And around here, of course, this is an annual thing. You have the bicycle rides and visits to the schools every year. I think it's during the school year, so you can visit them. And then they used to have the annual ride all the way to Washington and back. I'm not sure they have that part anymore, but they have the long ride in the mountains.
I think it's absolutely amazing because I didn't even know what was going on. There's a bunch of bicyclers, out in front of the house when I lived in New York. And they went to, the school. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. And they try to go to probably half a dozen schools on that one-day trip.
And that is amazing. Good for them.
It takes a lot of determination and a lot of energy to bike that long. So most of these people are bicyclists, aficionados anyhow.
But you know how pissed Lewis Lent must be knowing that there's an actual Sara Anne Wood Rescue Center that is now sponsored by the National Missing and Exploited Children, that they were doing all kinds of fundraisers, Little League, you name it, that they have a bicycle ride for Sara several times a year. You know how bad that chaps his ass?
You're talking about a very evil man with a plan. I doubt very highly that he's even concerned with that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, look at those people. They're keeping my name in the news. And that's how he's thinking. I'll bet.
Okay. That makes sense.
Started here in Utica, New York. And now they have rides in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and also Albany.
Frank Williams was first approached by a friend involved with the ride who suggested he join and meet Sarah's parents.
When you meet Bob and Frances, you become dedicated because of their strength, their love, and their determination.
Local businessman Earl Reed was similarly moved.
I met Bob Wood, and he's an amazing guy and just a gracious, good person.
So they rode their bikes to spread an important message to the most vulnerable in an upbeat way, with the true heavy mission never far from their thoughts.
It's a joyous event, but as you pull away, you realize what the mission is, and that's to bring children home that aren't able to participate.
The ride funded posters made right in Utica that featured the faces of missing children.
The Wood family had developed through the center this great method of putting up posters, printed posters of missing children, not across the state, but around the world. And that was a resource the national office did not have. So from that, we became the Mohawk Valley office of the New York branch of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, with the mission of child safety education and also for distribution of printed posters of missing kids.
It's something that I won't ever forget.
And it's amazing what they do too. It really, really chaps my ass when I see certain parents, not all, that want people to send them money for flyers, posters, and things like that. A lot of it is taken care of by law enforcement. Then you have
the center.
Then you have NEMEC. And they, like I said, they are Johnny on the spot. A child is missing, there's an alert, and they're printing, and they're running out to let everyone know. Because on foot, and as fast as you can do it, is faster than waiting on the 6 o'clock news.
Yes.
My hat's off to them. I'm telling you.
And this is never ending.
What we did. And if we touched somebody's soul, to be careful with your kids, that the age's innocence is gone.
The ride started in memory of Sara Anne Wood, has funded millions of posters of missing children and helped recover thousands. But time marched on and COVID changed the local landscape.
COVID, everybody started working from home, and then NECMEC, of course, everybody has a bottom line. So they realized they could do away with the office, and which they did. And we only have one local NECMEC employee.
Well, and that's really sad because I believe, I don't know why it was, voted that way in New York. I believe, NECMEC, National Missing Exploited Children, is an essential business. I don't think they should have sent people home.
Oh, they closed down the whole state.
Okay.
I mean, the only place you could go would be a liquor store or a grocery store, and otherwise you're supposed to stay in your home, and doctor's offices, for essential work. For a whole year, it was just crazy. Everything was shut.
Well, there were 6.5 weeks of it here in Oklahoma, and then Governor Stitt was like, "Nope, get back to it. Go get new clothes. Go get your hair cut." Just different strokes for different folks.
The ride itself took a hit from COVID, but organizers are working to build it back and inviting you to join and help.
We're rebuilding since COVID, and we're always looking for riders now. This December, January, we'll be making appeals for riders. If anybody's interested, get in touch with us.
The foot soldiers spinning their wheels for a
kiss my ass. Who would be riding a bicycle around there in December or January?
Oh, no, that's when they recruit.
Okay, sorry. Scratch that.
Good cause. Hope it'll lighten the load of an eternally grieving family.
I hope they take comfort in the legacy of Sara. This ride over 27 years has generated millions of dollars for NECMEC, and certainly that's been responsible for bringing some children home and preventing abductions of others.
If education and increased awareness were blessings that came from this tragedy, there was also a curse. The evil man from Massachusetts did more than kidnap and kill an innocent child. He stole an entire community's innocence.
Because I used to have to travel a lot from troop headquarters in Oneida to the command post on Hackadam Road. And, for years, their kids would be out waiting for a bus and stand inside the road waiting for a bus. After this happened, you never seen a child standing waiting for a bus at the end of the driveway without a parent standing there with them.
What I can't get over is his weird, smirky smiles when the cameras are on him.
Yes, it's like, I've got a secret and I'm not telling. That's how I read it. I maybe my imagination, but I don't think I'm too far off.
It's just so bizarre. And it breaks my heart when you hear, the officers say, this was an innocent community. Kids used to stand out and wait for the bus. It doesn't happen anymore.
Nowhere, not just her community, but nowhere around here. Every time you see parents with their kids, the buses aren't even allowed to stop unless there's a parent with a kid in a lot of the communities. That's how fearful they are to this day.
You can't even blame them. And I mean, let's look at the searches they've had for Sara. Vermont, Eastern Ohio, Buffalo, Syracuse. I'm sure you know others. Now, I do wonder if they found any traces of her in that house where he had that dungeon built. Because they've never said that I could find.
No, now let's see. She was kidnapped in August. Of 93. He got arrested in January 7th of 94. January 10th is when they hooked him up with her. And anything that it wasn't finished being built, that thing in his house. So I don't think that they would have found anything there of hers, because she wouldn't have been in a situation to use it yet.
He had some extravagant plans.
Yeah.
I mean, some real extravagant plans. I don't know if you're familiar with the case or how often you catch the channel. There was a case in Henrietta, a guy named Jesse McFadden. And what was described with Lewis Lent and what he had going on in his hidden room is what Jesse had set up in his home.
Oh.
The eye hooks, the chains. Angela, Sara is with Jesus. If he had admitted taking her life, I would agree that she is buried with other victims of his. That seems to be what the former DA, Daley, in Herkimer seems to think. Now, the detective said, well, this is his trump card, but there could be other bodies.
Right. It's interesting that he's from the Pittsfield area. She's from Litchfield. And they got her buried supposedly in the mountains, and he does a lot of traveling.
Well, it says right here, I'm just doing a simple Google search from Pittsfield, Massachusetts. You go through Albany, Troy, Latham, Schenectady, and then you go to Litchfield. It's, almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Now, I do know that he had some friends in the area, but they didn't see him when this was going on. But again, he confessed to another murder. I think there's going to be a lot more when they get to the bottom of it. It's going to take them a long time.
Sara Anne Wood was 12 years old when she was abducted by Lewis Lent on August 18, 1993. He pulled the girl into his van while she was walking her bike along a rural road near Frankfort, not far from Utica. Though the
See, again, they can't figure out where she's from. They're like, Frankfort, not far from Utica. It's like, just tell where she's from.
I think it's very interesting that they had a photo of him without his glasses on. Somebody with that prescription can't see worth beans without their glasses.
If I was an eye doctor, I would prescribe him binoculars.
But that's his prescription, and I just thought it was very interesting. He did not have them on, and I wonder why, unless they gave him a good sock and not dropped him into the ground. He hadn't gotten his replacement glasses yet or something like that.
I mean, I want to know exactly how do you make glasses that thick? You would know.
How many what? I'm sorry.
I said, how do you make glasses that thick? I said, I know you would know.
Well, there is a warehouse where they actually make prescriptions of every variety, and they make them quite large, and then you send them to another place where and get the frame that the person wants, and you grind the lens to the shape of the frame.
And and of course he picked the Jeffrey Dahmer look. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
DT
It was
Driver.
popular in the 90s.
Yeah. Very fashionable for Bill Gates and serial killers. But hey, that's just me. DT Driver, you know him. That's my husband. He said, I think he was involved with the same people that murdered Kimberly Simon in Whitesboro. He was actually brought up as a person of interest in that case.
That one I had not known too much about. You know what else was an interesting thing?
What's that?
I wanted to point out. Who else have we spoken about that is from Sauquoit?
Well, I mean, basically what we have, okay, so we know that they did the house search and they found the private chamber, okay?
That was in Massachusetts.
Okay. And he wanted quickies before their murders, is what he said. He confessed to Jimmy Bernardo, Sara Wood, but they know that he is tied to so many others. That's the only two confessions.
Or gave clues as to where he hid Sara Anne's body near Racket Lake in the Adirondacks. Her body has never been found. Now, nearly 20 years later, Herkimer County District Attorney Jeffrey Carpenter may resume the search for Sara Anne Wood. He spoke with me by phone.
We're looking at this anew. We're going to devote some attention to it, and we're going to try our best to locate her.
The disappearance of Sara Anne Wood came as quite a shock to people in and around the city of Utica, and they've joined forces with police to try to find her. DA Carpenter says he will convene a meeting of state police and other agencies to take another look at the file. Captain Mark Lincoln says state police have never given up.
It's been 20 years. We still get some occasional tips that come in. We investigate all of them that have the least bit of credibility.
Despite those tips, DA Carpenter still thinks the answers most likely lie with Louis Lent. Now 62 years old, he's serving a life sentence without parole in Massachusetts.
Okay, remember this is an older news article.
Yeah, right.
Actually, it's 70s now, and we're coming on 32 years since Sara was kidnapped, raped, and murdered. Now, he has confessed to rape, and they can't charge him with that in New York because they don't have her body.
Right.
Believe it or not, that makes sense. Second degree murder, he's only charged with that in New York. He'll never serve that sentence. He's going to die in Massachusetts.
That's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, he can enjoy it down there. He's having a good time, it seems. Second degree murder, because I did not know this. In New York, they cannot charge first degree without a body.
Right.
Every state's different.
Right. You know, they have their choices on how they're going to make their laws.
Mm-hmm.
DA Carpenter still thinks the answers most likely lie with Louis Lent. Now 62 years old, he's serving a life sentence without parole in Massachusetts for murdering 12-year-old Jimmy Bernardo and the attempted abduction of another girl. DA Carpenter says he plans to talk with Lent.
I've spoken to investigators that were involved with the initial crime back in 1993. And yeah, I think he probably does withhold the key piece of information. That is exactly where her body is located.
Captain Mark Lincoln says the force is ready to help search for the body once again, including some troopers who may have retired over the past 2 decades.
All you've got to do is look at a picture of Sara Anne Wood, look at the smile on her face to know that that's the type of case that stays with you your whole career and beyond.
If authorities are successful, they could provide some closure for her family and a community that has one last unanswered question. Where is Sara Anne's body? Reporting from Utica, I'm Jim Kenyon.
I'm just, there's no way I could ever get into this man's mind. What is the reason that he just won't say? Is it because there are other bodies there, or because that's his only protection in jail? I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably a combination. Certainly his safety is one of the few things he has any control over. And if he doesn't talk, he's safe because they're still waiting.
So that's his one thing. He can get his extra beefaroni because they know he's just sitting there, and eventually he'll say something.
He probably won't say anything, and they think he's going to say something eventually. I'll bet that's how it plays out.
Isn't that the craziest thing about criminals? Especially violent ones. You know, the ones that go to jail for like the rest of their life in a day. I mean, you have people that drop dead of a heart attack at 49, and their asses will live to 90. How does the hell that happen? What are they doing to them in jail? Are they just liking it?
Well, they got their exercises, and they've got their 3 square meals a day plus snacks, and they have a very relaxed atmosphere most of the time. It's an ideal situation.
For them?
For them, yes. I mean, not for anybody else, especially people who want information.
All right. Well, before we go, this is the most recent search for Sara Anne.
18 state police divers from Massachusetts and New York began searching Greenwater Pond in Berkshire County this morning. They hope to find the remains of 16-year-old Jamie Lusher of Westfield, Massachusetts.
Okay. Actually, this is a search for another one of his victims. We haven't even talked about Jamie. Now, where is this place?
That is, well, he was caught in Westfield, so I'm not sure exactly where the lake is. I think it's a little south of Westfield.
Okay, south of Westfield.
Wait a minute. No. I guess we'll have to look up that one.
Sure, no problem.
To find the remains of 16-year-old Jamie Lusher of Westfield, Massachusetts, who went missing in November 1992. They were led here by notorious child killer Louis Lent, who went on a deadly crime spree in Massachusetts and in central New York back in the early 90s.
We do hope that the family receives some closure from knowing that this is the location, and even more so if we can find some remain or something connected to Jamie that can be brought home to his family.
Louis Lent reportedly made a deal with prosecutors that he would not be prosecuted for the murder of Jamie Lusher. He's already serving a life sentence for the 1990 murder of another Massachusetts boy, Jimmy Bernardo. And 13 years ago, Lent pleaded guilty to kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder of 12-year-old Sara Anne Wood of Norwich Corners, which is near Utica. The revelation that Louis Lent has confessed to yet a third murder and is working with authorities in Massachusetts has lent a ray of hope to people here in Herkimer County. Sara Anne Wood's body has never been found, despite intense searches around her.
So he confesses to some, but with Sara, he will not say.
He's got some purpose behind all this. Evil people have purposes, and they can stick to it better than anybody. Of course, it did take him quite a while to give the information about Lusher, but still, it's been a lot longer not hearing the results about Sarah. He even sent them on a wild goose chase to Vermont a few years ago.
Yes, he did. And James Lusher is a, what's the right word to say? They say mentally disabled.
Yes, yes. He was capable of doing things like going to his grandmother's house on a bike by himself and things like that. So he wasn't too bad. They were a little slow. However, he wasn't able to deal with this evil being here.
No.
Even
Herkimer
bright
County
children can't.
and the area around Racket Lake in the Adirondacks. In February of this year, Herkimer County District Attorney Jeffrey Carpenter revealed that he would like to resume the search for Sara Anne Wood's remains and may have investigators re-interview Louis Lent. Today, I asked Carpenter what he thought of the search for Jamie Lusher's remains.
It's a step in the right direction, certainly, to bring a missing child back to his family after so many years and give closure to that family. I think is an outstanding step, and I hope the authorities in Massachusetts are successful in that regard.
As for resuming the search for Sara Anne Wood's remains, Carpenter would only say that he's in regular discussions with authorities in Massachusetts and would not comment further than that. Reporting from Herkimer, I'm Jim Kenyon.
Again, he's just not going to say. He'll give some of the most evil, some people will call it salacious details to his crimes. But when it comes to Sarah, for whatever reason, he will not. He drew him a fake map. That's the reason they were at Racket Lake.
Mm-hmm.
They've been to Vermont. They've been to Syracuse. They've been to Buffalo, Rochester. Anything they could find.
But Lasher, he hasn't really said where Lasher is. He says it's in Greenwater Pond. But they dredged the pond. They couldn't find anything. So he's playing games with that family too.
Well, I'm just going to get your opinion. Do you think he'll ever tell?
I kind of doubt it. That's horrible. And I wish him all the evil in the world, but I think he's just that evil.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he remains in great health. Okay? And he can just keep sitting there and spinning his mind and wondering when the next game is, because eventually he's going to say something that someone can crack and they will find the others.
Yes.
That's my hope. Well, I want to say thank you so much, everybody. Can you believe Dr. McCoy was back today? She's a very busy lady, and we are truly blessed. Let's please have a round of applause. And if I miss you in Discord, one of the Facebook groups, or however we chat, then I'll see you back here tomorrow, because we are having a members live Mother's Day and May birthdays. And again, I can't thank you enough for your wisdom, Doctor, your research, and just the way, hold on. R2 country girl, what's the chance she's still alive and left with someone else? I'll let the doctor answer that.
I highly doubt that. She was very, very bonded with her family. She was very, very bonded with her religion. And this would be completely antithesis of how she thought.
Yeah. She seems to be a little too, grounded to be kept somewhere, and especially since, you know, they have the evidence, and he said things about Sara that only he would know, and the police knew. Nobody else knew.
Right.
Well, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Thursday. And if we ask pretty please, I bet we can get the doctor back on here for another show.
Would be pleased. Thank you.
Me too. You guys are the best. Thank you. Thank you, doctor. Thank you to all of you. You guys are the absolute best community, chat, mods, members, friends, whatever you want to call it, on these nasty YouTube streets.